Waiting for my profile.
Okay, while we're waiting for last people to get their food and to take their seats, I'm going to just get some introductions out of the way and some thanks. My name is Jenny Gage. I chair the Finance Committee here at church, and I am assisted by a really incredible team. So let's start by seeing who the Finance Committee is. I'm going to go in no particular order, just where I see folks. And so let's start with Jane Quinn, if you can stand. Dave Janet Stewart-Bell. Karen Marumba. Who am I missing? Who's here today? Rich Green.
Coming to join us?
Okay. So thank you for being here.
Remember the finance committee. Yeah. No speech necessary.
Thank you.
And let's start with a word of prayer. God, we thank you for bringing us together. We thank you for giving us purpose and a place where we can be of use, where we can create sanctuary and space for others who need it. We thank you for giving us everything that we need. Pray that you'll give us open hearts and minds and make this a productive conversation today. Amen.
Amen.
So I deliberately went paperless today, partly because I'm lazy. Another reason is that I just want us looking and focusing together. If you have to leave early, if you're online right now and you want to look at this at your leisure, if you've got questions, we're going to have time for questions. But I invite you also if you want to just grab your phone or whatever right now, you can jot down a couple of things, which will be ways for you to get in touch with me. I am happy to email you a copy of this presentation today. My email is jennifer.gage, so JENNIFER .GAGE@gmail.com. My phone number, I welcome that because my email is kind of a mess. Texts are good. But if you text me, please say, hey, this is whoever, so that I know who you are and I can put you in my contacts. My number is 917-656-5307. Okay?
Say that number again.
917-656-5307. And even if you don't have questions, say, hi, this is so-and-so, and I'll put you in my contacts. Okay, I call this the State of the Budget Sunday, excuse me. This is in honor of my father, who in my childhood, in times of stress, before my mother fired him as the family business manager, would assemble what he called State of the Union addresses. This is really a report of where we're at and where we want to go. It's to the congregation. This has to be our collective ideas and our collective roadmap. So here we go. Let's remember that we're going to be talking about numbers, but this isn't just dollars and cents. This is a faith statement. I think Kelly put it really beautifully this morning. This is our opportunity to respond to this present moment, to the overwhelming and overflowing abundance that we find week after week in each other's company in this place, and to the Spirit of God that's at work through us and that created us for a time like this. This is our faith statement. This is how we respond, what we're going to do next. I don't know about you. This week was bleak. I woke up on Wednesday after not very much sleep. And I had a almost instant thought of this gathering this morning, or this afternoon, or whatever it is. And I was like, what am I doing? How am I gonna go? What am I doing with my life? What am I committing myself to? What am I gonna do asking my church family to double down with what on that day, for this white lady with her privilege, seemed like a shock and a shocking state of affairs. Seemed like we were just a powerless remnant. Seeming like I was teaching my daughter a dead language. It was a bleak week. But I gotta say, I'm not feeling that way at all right now, because I'm with you, and the Spirit of God is with us. Amen. And I looked around in my world, and on the interwebs, and in the generous phone calls of many in this community, who reflected back to me what I'm doing with my life, what we're doing in this place. I got a long text from Connor, and he said, what I'm doing, what we're doing is we're creating a space. We're creating a welcome where all of us who need it, when we need it, can go. And the work is the same work as it is every day and every week. So let's get busy. I'm vowed this year to keep things pretty high level, not because I think anybody can't handle the detail or isn't up to it, but because I actually think it's pretty simple. When we're talking about budgets on a concrete level, as opposed to that faith statement and that moral document, we're talking about income and we're talking about expenses. Money that comes in, money that goes out. And so we're going to break it down on a high level. It's really pretty simple. This is our income. This is what we're projecting in the year ahead, a budget that's a little bit over $1 million. Comes from 3 major sources. One of these sources is earned income. That includes, well, I'll show you the breakdown in a little while. Just leave it at the high level. It's earned income. This one is gifts, grants, and contributions. That's 43%. And then that 8%, that little white slice there, is investment income and investment returns. Breaking it down a little bit, you see the same categories. Let's start with contributions, gifts, and grants. So the big one there on the bottom, of contributions, gifts, and grants, that's us. Okay, that's the pledged,
Bless you.
Pledged gifts. It's a big number. It's in our bulletin right now as a $330,000 target. The finance committee and I built this with a $335,000 target. It's a big number, and we need to get there. We'll talk about that more later. The next little orange is our unpledged gifts. The gifts that come from the visitors who might be here from France or Queens or walking by on the street, that happens too. We got some really generous gifts to our food pantry this year, as we heard this morning, from people just walking by. Right, so that's the unplanned or unpledged gifts. Hard to project, hard to know what that's gonna look like. Although I do think we can be more strategic and more overt in reaching out to people who are coming from long distances because they want to be here, to invite them to be part of us in that way. Then we have designated gifts. That's that little gray. Designated gifts are when somebody gives a specific offering for a specific cause or purpose, right? Whether that's repairing the Tiffany windows, or a gift to the food pantry, or the homeless ministry, or whatever that sort of special purpose gift is. And then the last little one on top is grants. We have one grant. It's something new. It's actually already been awarded to us by the Presbytery, and we'll be using it next year. It's a $25,000 grant that is for our tech operations. Not only will it provide about a $15,000 subsidy for the work that we're already doing in terms of reaching all of us who use it for live streaming and reaching our people far away, it's also helping us with our training and supporting of a robust and incredibly skilled tech team that can and will be, with those grant monies, going out to other churches in the Presbytery and providing them with live stream. Right? The world has changed. We were incredibly blessed to already be a good way along the way when the pandemic started. And we kind of knew how to do this, and then we have this incredibly talented team that is just taking it further and further, and the Presbytery is excited about that and wants us to support other churches and wants us to take it farther. So that's something that we're building, and so we're excited that we're starting to see grants. There could definitely be more. We'll talk about that. Earned income, that is, if you look at it, this is always surprising, you know, when you hear on public radio or whatever, and you're looking for, they're asking for your donations or whatever. It's what we're getting from earned income is actually more overall than the contribution, gifts, and grants, right? We have a big, let's take the big blue one in the middle. That large $315,000 chunk there, that is for the rental of this space during the week to the St. Anne's kindergarten program. That is a partnership that has existed since before I've been here, which is coming up on 20 years. They've been a stable and great tenant partners, and they have kept our lights on in so many critical and critical ways, right? We're going to talk about this more, but next year, 2025, will be our last full year of that partnership. St. Anne's is in the process of building a facility that will, a campus or a building that will hold their entire K through 12 school, and that means they will no longer, as of June 2026, be our tenants. That is going to, and we'll talk about this, that is going to open up in 2026, so the year after this, a 17% hole in our operating budget, unless we get creative and find ways to fill that. And in 2027 and beyond, that'll open a 33% hole in our budget. So just, that's that big piece. We have other areas of earned income, however. That one on the bottom, Blue is something new that's happening. That's Elliott Room Rentals. We've got a strategic space task force and dedicated members of the Buildings and Grounds Committee who've thought about the fact that we are sitting in this gorgeous building in this beautiful neighborhood, you know, steps from the promenade, one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Brooklyn, and are looking for different ways and different partners who might want to do short-term rentals. Starting next year, we have a contract with an event planner who's going to be converting this into a space for weddings and receptions in a professional manner, and is going to be managing that. And we're looking forward to a brand new income stream that we haven't had before. Sanctuary rentals. We do rent the space to the Brooklyn Youth Choir, or Brooklyn Youth Chorus. We have special events. We have opportunities to develop that further as well. That orange piece, that sort of brownish orange that's up top there, that's a really exciting one, and the credit there goes again to the Buildings and Grounds team. That's rentals in the manse. So some of you may know that Pastor Noble, the manse is the building next door. It's a 4-story brownstone. And it dates to an era, I guess, when, you know, a pastor of a big church like this would have a big stately home there and probably lots of church events and all that kind of stuff. Pastor Noble came to us out of retirement, actually, and she didn't need the manse, so she's not living there. And so great minds were like, that's an incredibly valuable piece of real estate. And for this whole past year, well, since about April, I think, April 1st, and going through at least another year, because I think they've just renewed, we have tenants in that manse apartment that are paying pretty close to $10,000 a month and generating some incredibly necessary income right now. Also negotiated some additional rent to sort of bring up to market value another apartment in the building that was being used, was already being rented out. So bringing that up and making that more competitive, so we really thank them for that work. And we've still found a way there to make space for our incredibly valuable staff and our programming. Also living in the manse right now, of course, are Victor, our sexton, who is on hand all the time to take care of our emergencies and our physical plant. We have Connor Foley, our outreach minister, who is so critical to being the face of the church in the neighborhood, and is there. And we have the Nooners, who are just expanding their role incredibly in terms of their family ministry, and also opening up that space more and more. I know that I see a lot of young families here and other people who have benefited from programming now and the space to be together over in that manse. So that's an incredible testimony to a new income stream, or an augmented income stream. We're going to get a new pastor. We don't know who that pastor is going to be, if that pastor is going to have a family, have another apartment, anything could happen, right? We don't know who that person is going to be. So there's going to be some changes there. We don't want to get complacent about that. Last one's investment income. Not much to say about that. That comes from one source. We have an endowment. It's robust, it's healthy, and it kicks out, we take 4% per year from it, a very sustainable amount, especially when markets are going nuts like they are. We take 4% each year, and that has grown so that we're now up to 86 for the projected for next year, but you know what, that was based in September, and my guess is it'll be higher. I do want to point out that there has been some misinformation around the challenges that we have. We're going to be talking about expenses right now, and ooh, are we draining and are we crippling our endowment in the future? No, we've been good stewards of that. We have had deficit spending for the last couple of years, and this year is going to be one as well. However, we have not tapped into that endowment beyond the 4% at all. In fact, we have added to it significantly. It's grown a lot. Okay, so that's healthy and strong, and that's something to be grateful for. Generations before us got that seeded and got that started, and we continue to be blessed by that, and we also want to make sure that that's there to always provide that sort of stability and flexibility, right, for the future. Okay, other side. Again, let's look at a big picture, and then let's look at it a little bit more granularly. Big picture, our projected expenses are next year are about $1,077,000. There's a couple of things that still need to be sort of straightened out, and honestly, what happens next with this budget is that session is going to take a closer look at it in December. Once we start getting some returns from the pledge drive and understanding what actual versus projected will be, right? And we'll be looking at the needs, and we'll be making decisions based on that, okay? So this is still a document that's in flux, and the first thing that you'll notice is that expenses are a little bit higher, not significantly, like 7,000 higher than income, give or take. It has a couple of big blocks. The largest is our staff and salary. Payroll expenses of all kinds. This is salaries, this is subcontractors, guest ministers, this is health insurance, medical benefits, this is employer taxes. This is all the stuff that goes into compensating our staff. I'd call that a fixed cost. Next big category, dark blue there. Plant and property. Gorgeous building. Old. Some of you may have noticed that a chunk of the ceiling came down. Fortunately, not when Amy was standing there. Right? A couple months ago? Yeah. Utilities have been nuts this year. There's just ordinary maintenance that we need to do, and then there's things that we also need to do to invest to continue to maintain this property and to bring it up to standards so that we can start using it maybe in new and creative ways, right? We may need to invest even more to take care of this building. It's a really, really valuable asset. One thing that I think is helpful to realize about this property is to realize we don't own it, y'all. We're just the current family living in it. And the family is the Presbyterian Church, and it's been in this particular part of Brooklyn for 200 years. We paid nothing for it. We maintain it and we take care of it for our needs and for the work of God on 124 Henry Street. The white one. chunky, but not even a quarter. That's all of our programming. Programming I call anything that a committee does. So that's worship, that's mission, that is Queerly Beloved, that is homeless ministries, that is men's breakfast, that is communications, all of the things. All of the things. Tech. And the last one is like admin stuff. You know, we have to have a copy machine and Wi-Fi and paper and postage and all that kind of stuff. So those are our big categories. Last year I played some games with y'all. I wanted to make what I thought was an obvious case and be like, when we're looking for discretionary budget funds, if we want to get away from, you know, we want to bring this number down, this, you know, because 1 million, that's a, we're into the 7 figures now, right? And that's a little scary to a lot of us, right? So we want to bring it down. And so my question then is, where are we going to cut? And last year I made what I thought was a preposterous proposal that everybody would be like, that is preposterous, so we're going to do something else because it's unthinkable. Which was, well, we could reduce our staff. Insane. Right? We got job to do. We have the most talented, dedicated, and invaluable staff that God could have provided. Right? Oh, we could cut on the building. Next. Oh, we are spending like drunken sailors on our programming. No, we're not. We're doing it on the backs of incredibly hardworking volunteers who have been all kinds of creative to do more each year with less. I want you just to reflect, however long it is that you've been here in this church, think of how it was and what it is now. Is there more programming? Is there more stuff going on than when you got here? Yes. There sure is for me. Okay? So, do we have space to cut there? Sophie's choice. And admin, well. So, we can't really do anything about this except acknowledge and be realistic about what our costs are. So we need to think about the other side of the equation, which is income. Oh, this was supposed to be my illustration, I forgot. This just puts it in perspective. This is the breakdown a little bit more. Plant and property, I put that up there. It's just a big bar. To get really boring, I could have been like, this is utilities, and this is what we're spending on the manse repair and maintenance, and this is what we're spending on the building repair and maintenance, but y'all, it's plant and property. Staff payroll and benefits. We've covered that one. All those itty bitty little things in the middle, that's where we're talking about programming. We've got, I'm going to start from the bottom. We've got music. We've got tech. We've got children, youth, and families. Think about those 3 committees right here, and think about the growth you've seen in the past year. Mission, that's the one there in the middle. We made a commitment as a body a number of years back when we discovered that we were spending only about 2 or 3% of our operating budget on social action and being of service to our community, and we're like, that doesn't really reflect our values, does it? That doesn't really reflect what we say that we are here to do in building the beloved community in this little neck of the woods. And so we made a commitment that we were going to grow that by 1% a year till we got up to 10% of our operating budget. Kind of that tithe number that the scriptures tell us about. And we're not there yet. We're not there yet. All the other committees, stewardship, membership, fellowship, communications, marketing, social excellence in mission, yeah. All that other stuff is there. General and administrative, again, you see that. The last one, this little bit, I just want to point that one out because a lot of people don't know it. That says presbytery on it. We're part of a tradition and a network that's incredibly valuable to us, the Presbyterian Church. Presbyterian Church supports and delivers incredible ordained ministers to lead us, like Pastor Noble. It supplies us with this building, right? The presbytery owns this building, really not us. Provides us with resources that we need right now to transition. They do all kinds of stuff. And then also does works of action, right? There's Presbyterian folks that are out and representing us and being our hands and our feet from our national PCUSA organization that are representing us, for instance, in Gaza, right? We all pay into that. It's an apportionment. We take a census every year, and for each member of our congregation, it's about $60. So those of us who are sitting on the sidelines and being like, I kind of give when I have some money left over at the end of the month, well, that's not how we do it. Just want to put that out there. Let's talk about how our budgets have been in the recent past. I'm only going to talk about, I'm going to talk about 2023 and 2024, and I'll show you why. And I want to, I think, actually dispel some concerns. I definitely want to dispel some misinformation that I think is continuing to hold us back in grappling with the tough job of running a church with $1 million budget. This is 2023, and in 2023, we ended the year with a $53,000 deficit. So we spent $53,000 more than we brought in. There were a bunch of reasons for that. And in this slide and the next, I'll show you the ones that were the biggest causers of the deficit, and then the one that you see in orange is the biggest causer for why it wasn't worse. Okay? So, 2023. This blue bar is what we pledged. This one is what we actually gave. That little gap there, it's more than $50,000. This was our unpledged. We guessed we did it thoughtfully. We had a year before this where we'd actually gotten $185,000 in unpledged gifts. Incredible generosity from people we didn't know about, right? We thought that sounded like maybe a little bit of an outlier year and we should bring it down. So we brought it down to 135 and boy, do we miss. So that was another chunk of 40-ish, I think. And then the physical plant. This is an expense. So this is what we budgeted. And y'all, this is what we spent. Because old. We have to be realistic about what this beautiful space requires. And we have to take care of it, like the generations that came before us and the ones that will come behind us. So we really missed. So how on earth did we only come short by $50,000? Salaries. This is what we budgeted, and this is what we spent. So let's talk about our staff here. I mean, what we had budgeted for in 2023 was bringing on an interim pastor, right? And there are certain costs. The presbytery actually sets what a senior pastor's compensation needs to be, right? So we had set aside that amount. We figured that at some point in 2023 we would have it, and that is not what happened. Joined us on or around January 1st, right? So she's been with us for 2024, but was not with us in 2023. That means Connor, acting in an unofficial interim capacity and supported by the other staff members who are also working incredibly hard, not only kept things going, but rallied the troops and got started on what we're seeing now just in spades, right? All the ways that Pastor Noble tells us we are not normal, we are growing. And that got started in this period when we were really, really understaffed. We also did a reorganization of the Children, Youth, and Families program, which just didn't seem like it was doing all the things that we had hoped for our family ministries. And we ended up eliminating a position, so that reduced our salaries, because one position went away. And guess what? That position hasn't been replaced. Our incredible volunteer staff on Children, Youth, and Families. Nate Dudley, you hear him telling us what the children's sermon is going to be every week. And a whole crew of young families that are taking this up and growing this. We're stronger and healthier than ever. But again, it's come from people's hard work. So when last year, when we were looking at deficits, this is misinformation, and I'm asking all of you to nip it in the bud. I will be forever grateful to Jane Quinn and Janet Bell, who in the last annual meeting, when we started finger pointing and saying that it's this terrible spending and blah, 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 that's running away, said, no, it's not. We can't really do anything about the unpledged stuff. Again, we don't know. We can forecast. I think we can get a little bit more ambitious about asking more than we do, for sure, to drive that number up. This is the part we can directly control, y'all. And what Jane said that day, and what Janet said that day was, y'all, if we said, if we did what we said we would do, we would have a budget surplus right now. Simple as that. So please, when you hear finger pointing, when you hear misinformation like that, shut it down because it doesn't serve. It doesn't move us forward. It doesn't unite us. It's focused on the past. 2024. We have a projected deficit again. This is just based on sort of extrapolating out. We have financials through the end of September. We'll have results for October this week. But right now it was looking at the end of September, we were 3/4 of the way through the year. And so if you extrapolate out for one more quarter, assuming everything stays the same in terms of all of the income and expense trends, we wind up about that much short. Y'all, again, it could be a lot worse. This is not me being like, cavalier about deficit spending. Deficit spending as an ongoing pattern is not sustainable. But it's not a crisis. We are not, I hear words like peril, catastrophe. I hear panic and I hear fear a lot in our conversations about that. Love dries out, fear, Fear is not what needs to be setting our budget. We can choose to curtail our scarcity mindset and let our budget reflect the abundance that we know is ours. Pledge gifts, this is what we said. This is where we're at. Projected. Unpledged, it's better this year. A big one was a big chunk, $10,000 check that came from a Lutheran charity that saw our food bank. And another person just walking by down the street, by the way, that just cut us a $500 check. But since those map directly onto costs, we have about $22,000 we spend on our food budget annually, we could apply those designated donations right there, immediately and fully in their intended capacity, and that freed up more of the general offering for other areas. So that brought up our unpledged. We could still do better in the pews, y'all. Church maintenance, budgeted, actual, ceiling fell, needed to spruce up apartments so that we could rent them, needed to start working in this space so that this can be for wedding rentals, all that kind of stuff. Old. God makes a way for us over and over and over. God keeps sending those life rafts to us, and we shouldn't be surprised. We should be grateful. We should be creatively engaged in creating the conditions, which is, I think, the openness in our spirits for blessings to come through our labors, right? But that's what we thought. Looking ahead, that idea was already there. I bet we could rent the pastor's apartment. And so we budgeted a pretty good chunk that we thought we could get from increasing those manse rentals. And then our team went and just over that goal. They got folks in there faster and at a much higher rate than we had anticipated. And we're going to benefit from that for at least another full year. So God is good, and man, so are our people. Also pay your pledges.
Amen.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Giving Sunday is 2 weeks from today. Typically, it's the time when most people give. Please do it by 2 weeks from today, or I'm going to have to call you. which I'd be happy to do, but it's going to take all of my December. So please do it 2 weeks from today.
So this is where I shift into, it's a little bit of a gray line between finance and stewardship, and John Abernethy there is our stewardship committee chair. So he's going to be the one directing the troops and the phone calls and all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about pledges. And here you've seen this before, because this was an analysis that was done by Sam Davies. Hi, Sam and Allie, if you get this later, they're off in Australia now, but still parts of our church. And what I did is I just added on last year, so you can put it into 2024. So this last column is 2024, so you can see how what this year, our present reality, fits in with the big picture. And what this shows y'all is, this is 2015, and this is 2024. And what you see there is our pledges that were raised each one of those years. 335. Jenny, are you crazy? John, are you crazy? We can't possibly raise that. Oh, really? 2020, we raised 336. 2021, 335. 2017, 334. Pretty close. 2016, 328. This is not adjusted for inflation, y'all. We have done so much more with less every single year. Think of what you were spending to keep a roof over your head, whether you own or rent an apartment, 10 years ago. Think of what your grocery bill cost. Think of what your streaming services cost. Think of what your health insurance cost. Think of the vacations that you afforded yourself or couldn't. Think of all of those things. I'm not meaning to be scolding y'all. I do mean to be chipping at our scarcity mentality. 0.5% increase on average between 2015 and 2023. And then we actually fell off a little bit last year. This is where I want to attack, again, not to be a scold, but what I'm attacking is our despair. And what I'm attacking is our scarcity mentality. And what I'm attacking is our notion that there's nothing we can do to get to the funding that we need for next year. I think there's a lot. This chart and this graph shows, again, from 2014 up to, I didn't fix these, I'm sorry. This is actually 2024. So all these numbers are off by one, but you get the idea. So I think it goes 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Apologies for that. These numbers up here, these growing heights of the bar, this is the number of households that submitted a pledge of whatever size, big or small. From 2015 to, I guess then this is actually 2018, it was an overall trend of 10% up, right? And since that time, it has been diving down. In around here, this is pledge cards, yeah.
What about the dollar?
I showed you that the amounts that we've raised, and the budget's been about flat, right? We've raised about the same level for all that time. This is the number of households, but I think this is a really important piece that we're missing when we say that we can't raise anymore, which is that in general, there has been this downward trend. Now, I realize that there was a pandemic in there, and I think when I see these numbers, these lower ones, and frankly where we were at December 2023, so, you know, the position that John was in and the stewardship team was in December last year, we had about 70 folks, 70 households that had turned in pledge cards. And they worked really, really, really hard, and they got that back up. This is actually 107, not 109, so again, it's pretty much on par, and we got back up in that line.
We'd rather not have to do that this year.
We'd rather not have to do that this year. I think this, you know, we just had an election where a whole lot of people said that their pocketbook issues were really, you know, the most important things, and we're holding them back and all that kind of stuff. I think we had a little bit of that too, right? And a lot of us decided to sit it out at that time. Right after college, I was living in Baton Rouge, and I got invited to a very strange but incredibly wonderful Stone Soup party. So everybody know the story of Stone Soup? Where some, you know, charismatic person comes into the town and he's hungry. And he wants to be fed, and he asks people for food, and they say, no, I got mine, brother. Take care of yourself. And so he switches things a little bit, and he talks to the children, because they're a lot more reasonable a lot of times. And he tells them, I can make this amazing delicacy, stone soup. It is out of this world. I've got the stone right here. All I need is a carrot. And so somebody says, well, I got a carrot. Amazing. Let's start making this soup. You know, if we had a potato, it'd be that much better. And on and on and on, and everybody was like, well, I got a potato. I got some onions. Garlic, I got that. Parsley, I got that. All the stuff, and they made this pot of soup, and everybody ate. As a community, everybody ate, including that man who was just hungry. So we had a stone soup party, and we told stories about our family. Everybody had to bring one thing, and we actually put a stone in the pot. And we all told our story about who we were and where we came from. And we made a really darn good soup. It was delicious. And it was community building. And it was affirming. And nobody was the star of the show. Jesus told a parable, actually didn't tell a parable. Jesus enacted this for us. The Gospels tell us of two occasions when, I keep bringing this one up, but it loaves and fishes, y'all. All these people out in the woods, out in the wilderness, what are we gonna do? I'm hungry. I get it, like, who was planning? Somebody should have packed a lunch. And always a little kid who's like, I got my lunch my mom sent me with. And Jesus takes that offering from that child and multiplies it, and everybody eats. Y'all, we are the offering. I am 100% convinced that if we hit this goal, not this goal, it's in the bulletin. There's a thermometer for the 335 we're hoping to raise, and there's another thermometer that says 137. That's the number of households, 30 more than this year, that we would like to be contributing something. I do not care what number it is. That is between you, God, and your finances. You can't give beyond your ability, but God will bless you with
abundance.
Abundance. Yeah. So we just have to give. I feel certain that if we took our eyes off the $335,000, one that scares us, and we put it on the 137, which is absolutely achievable, and just part of this, I am sure that those loaves and those fishes would more than feed us. I'm sure that we would exceed that target without a doubt.
Jenny,
Yep,
can I ask a question?
yep,
So what you're asking is for everybody to make good on their pledge, no matter what the pledge is, and if you haven't pledged, please pledge.
yes, yes.
Is there anything else you're asking for?
Um,
So we know exactly what our marching orders are.
So I think, certainly those of us who are pledgers already, and of course we understand there are some circumstances that are going to arise in your life from time to time that might mean that in a given year you can't give all that you had hoped to give. But that's where we're stronger together, remember y'all? We have the aggregate, so we are all members of one another, and so the math will work out, right? As long as it's not a situation where we kind of look to somebody else to solve this problem instead of seeing ourselves as part of it. So those of us who are already pledgers, I do want us to challenge, I want to challenge those of us who are already, I want to challenge those who are not pledgers yet, yes, become pledger. Come in at whatever level. By the way, I don't have any idea, nobody on the financial committee, our church administrator who sort of manages the income, the head of stewardship, very, very few people have access to that information. It's not my business, right? But we will get there together. We have these resources. I want, just a minute, I want to have us look at the fact that our pledges have stayed flat all these years, and then ask ourselves, is this really me in an abundance mindset when I'm planning my pledge, or is it a scarcity mindset? I shared this a whole bunch of times that, something that Pastor Adrian said one time sort of got me realizing that I was doing my budgeting backwards for what I said was important to me, and I was sort of looking at sort of what's in my bank account at the end of the month, and that's what I'll pledge. Well, not all of it, because some other stuff I want to do too, but in other words, thinking small, and I just flipped it and thought, what about if I make a plan to budget for this just like I budget for all the other stuff that I think are necessities of my life? And just do it that way, and my pledge went up a bunch. And it scared me at various points. Some years it's been easier, and some years it's been harder, but it went up a bunch. I could do more. So if you are already a pledger, I want you just to think and interrogate yourself and talk to God. And do what's in your heart. and it will be enough. I want to encourage everybody, again, I'm not scolding us. We've been through a lot, y'all, and we are doing amazing things. But I want to encourage us to attack our scarcity mindset. You've seen this one before again, but please look at it with me in the light of the election result that we woke up to on Wednesday, or went to sleep with on Tuesday night. We are in a time where what we are doing here, the work of God that we are doing here, the community that we're building, what we are to each other, and what refuge we can provide, what place we can provide for others is more critical than ever. The resistance is more critical than ever. Right? We plugged along in our flat way all those years for decades, a decade, probably more, I don't know, at the same level. And then we had a little thing called the pandemic. It happened at the start of 2020. We'd already raised for 2020 a really, nice amount, 336, that's great. But then we were all sitting home, and yeah, I know that when we weren't commuting and we weren't going out to eat and we weren't doing things like that, a lot of us, and we were getting, I know for a lot of us money was weirdly a little easier during that time. But we're also super clear on our priorities, and we met that 336, and we added almost $100,000 more. Because we felt that this was the thing that was holding us together. This was what we needed to have survive. This was the most important sort of source of community connection that many of us had during that time, and it was pretty easy. And we had $434,000 at the end of that year. And guess what? This is also the answer to well, why have we been running $50,000 deficits for the last couple of years, and we're not tapping into the endowment? Because of this. We can do this. As you're looking at the way the world is changing right now, and the way you want it to be, where do you want to invest your treasure? Where do you want to invest your time? Where do you want to invest your talents? Last one, and then I'm going to take a bunch of questions. SWOT analysis, summary statement for all of us to think about. I posed this to the elders, and I'm asking you now. And I really do invite you to email me, to call me, to text me, or whatever with your thoughts on this. And of course, we can share it as well in questions here. Since this is a moral document, so in business speak, a SWOT chart is strengths, what we've got going for us, weaknesses, those are our challenges, opportunities, that's what we could do next, that's our action items, and then threats, the stuff that we have to watch out for. We're a faith-based organization now, and this is a moral document, so strengths are our blessings, y'all. And God doesn't tell us to be grateful only in the good days, but to make gratitude our practice. Because the thing that making gratitude our practice does is it wakes us up to what's most important in our lives, and there's a lot there. We have a growing church. That means numbers, families, young people, babies. Talented, resourceful staff and volunteers, amazing. An endowment providing steady and growing investment income, amazing. We actually have, the ability to invest if we need to get the new things going. A 200-year legacy of generosity, y'all. We're part of a 200-year history of generosity and a beautiful, desirable location. Weaknesses? We're a faith organization. Let's call these our confessions. We confess that we have bought into scarcity mentality and our pledges have stayed flat for a decade. We confess that we have often shortchanged what we said we would offer in the form of our time, our talent, our resources. We confess that we haven't done everything that we need to do to engage new members and newcomers of all kinds, reach out to them, make them feel a part, and to join us in the work. So the growth in our congregation and in our ministries, all that extra stuff that we're doing now that we didn't do before, right? We're not translating that into our giving. Threats. This is our prayer list. Loss of St. Anne's lease. I don't think we focus on the fear, but we need to know that that is there. But I put in as something to pray about as well is the fears that are around the loss. Because a lot of conversations we've been having for the last bunch of years have been fear-based and have been, what can we cut from our budget so to fill that $335,000 hole? We already talked about that. We don't have anything to cut, except our ministry, right? Our ministerial costs are going to rise with a new senior pastor. One of the things that will rise is that, well, we don't know what will happen, but we have to think about the manse apartment we might need to take that back and we might be housing a pastor there. So right now that's providing like $90-some thousand of income a year, and that's not going to be forever. Finger pointing, risk of burning out staff and volunteers with the demands to do more with less. This is also for our prayer list, y'all. Opportunities, action items. What can you do? Lots of different income generation. How can we attack the side that we can control, right? Lots of them have been bubbling up. You may have some more. So I've given you some people to talk to. Don't keep them to yourself. This is not an exhaustive list, by the way. So if you're not on there and you want to be on this list and help me share it out, I'm happy to do that. Grants. We've got one. Lynn's really interested in exploring other grants. And if you've got skills in the area of grant writing or you're just interested in that, talk to Lynn. Legacy giving. Talk to Jane Quinn. We have, an opportunity to ask people kind of, I guess, my age and up about planning for giving beyond our lives. Creative uses of our space, right? We've got a strategic task force that is a strategic space use task force that's trying to figure out how to generate the money that is currently being supplied by St. Anne's. As fantastic a tenant as they are, as absolutely critical as that partnership has been, to us, as much as we cannot imagine what we're going to do without it, we need to start imagining, because guess what? I think actually most will agree that it's fairly undervalued. right? They've been great tenants, but it's also a little bit below market rate, as we found out when we looked at other uses of our space. Nate's got all kinds of really creative ideas that he just sprung up, and I'm just singling him out because when I asked the elders what their ideas were, he had like a gazillion. And you know, he's got energy, so talk to him. Timely review of our mission. We have a great opportunity right now as we're planning for what do we want to do, where do we want to focus our ministries, and so on. Pastor Noble is here and so capably bringing us through this transition process. We're going to get to sit to think together and dream together about what we want to do in the next phase. So timely, given what's going on in the world around here. And then the last thing is join us. Okay? Submit your pledge and stay involved. And I'm done now, but I forgot, other than questions, I want to acknowledge the generosity that has come in all kinds of forms. If you're still here, well, obviously if you're still here, but you could go ahead if you're on the live stream too, or if you're, they're not going to be, on chat. If you, in the 2024, if you have participated on the work of a committee or attended a committee meeting, would you please stand? Any committee. Karen, get yourself up. Deborah, get yourself up.
I need someone to remind me.
Radhika, what are you doing sitting down? Rich. Okay. That's just 2024. Yeah, I'm preaching the choir here, but there's a lot of us, y'all. We have so much to be thankful for. All right, I'm done. Laura, I think you were going to pass the microphone around.
Wait. Yay!
So we'll have Q&A
Yeah.
Okay, Jane and then Dennis. Okay.
I don't know that number yet.
I thought it was closer to 200. I think it's what the documented members of the church that we're paying $60 a year for, right? So I'm just wondering about whether whether we could set an expectation that every member pledges. That's really what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, the expert on the apportionment is, well, maybe you can shout it out. Do we have a idea of what the number is?
235.
What? 235.
Number of members on our books.
Members on our books. So that's the capacity. We're looking at trying to get 137 households to pledge. Yeah, we can blow that one out of the water.
Two in a household.
Right.
We could have more, that's true. Those members could be multiple people, so that's not necessarily as high as that. That's true. So even if we cut it in half, although that's not always going to be the same, if we cut that number in half, we're still a good ways, and then of course, you don't have to be a member to pledge.
Right. How many pledge now?
107 pledged this year.
107.
Actually, that's...
I'm looking at the threats. What I'd like to know, should, when we find a new senior minister, right, evidently they won't be moving into the match right away, or, I mean, the people in the match have already leased.
Yeah, we're more than a year away from having a new minister here.
Oh, okay.
So we're not.
They're overlap.
Yeah, so again, you can add to the prayer list for our buildings and grounds we'll have to figure out how to time that lease to maximize the benefit,
Yeah,
right?
because my question was, you know, in other churches, the senior minister, if they do not use that parsonage or that manse, they are, part of their package is housing.
Correct, yes, they get a housing supplement in lieu of that.
Okay.
Yes,
I-
yep, as does our pastor right now, for whom that is the case, but it's much less than what we raise through the rental of the mats. But we don't know those circumstances for
Okay.
the person coming in. Question?
Sorry, Toofer. So we are presently paying into the presbytery for 235 persons, right?
Sounds right.
So how often do we update our membership list? Updated emails, updated telephone numbers? Do we go through a list every year and take out those who have passed on? You know, and plus, another thing also is that I'm wondering.
Walk your mic over to
Sure. So, and another thing I'm wondering, that if Madeline pledges to give $60 a month, and June or July comes, and Madeline hasn't given 10 cents, who's calling Madeline? Who's asking her, what, you know, what's up? Who's answering her?
So you're asking first about the membership list. That's being addressed right now. So we will have a different number starting at the beginning of the year. Okay? And the person who's calling to see if you gave your $60 is John in this committee.
Who's talking? Oh, who's saying, talking about the car?
Are you running around like
Couple things. First of all, I want to thank Jenny and the Finance Committee for all the work in getting this together and appreciate the presentation. The kids today in Kids Church made a Thanksgiving chain. So these are all the things that they wrote down that they were thankful for, and then we made a chain of them to put them together. There were 9 kids in Kids Church and 4 parents, and I think there's 5 pieces of the chain here where the kids actually wrote, "I'm thankful for the church." Right? So I'm going to just start by saying that. Second, Lynn, I think it was Lynn, asked about marching orders. I feel like having listened to this and having been involved in the budget and having been on session, that I'm taking away a bunch of different marching orders. First marching order, we have to give what we pledge. Right? We haven't. So that's just kind of number one. Number two, we all of us in this room and beyond, I know that there's a strategic committee working on this, but we all need to find either an anchor tenant or something that's going to fill up the loss that we're going to have in the middle of 2026. That's all of us. Like, we all have to be working on that and thinking about that. A preschool, like, there's all different kinds of options for that. And I think Jenny's right. It is undervalued, and we may end up making more money off of the space that we're making now, even though they've been a good tenant, right? But it's on all of us to be looking for that, and I think we need to have something in place. My goal, hopefully, if we're intentional about it, is December 2025, when we're budgeting again next year. We should know this, right? We should have a sense, okay, what's going to happen in July of 2026 at that point. Third, we need to get our new members to pledge. Jane has been working on bequests. We all need to be thinking about what are we going to give to this place when we die, right? And like, I think we need to be intentional about that. We haven't been, right? Marching orders. We need to rent this room more. We're hiring somebody to do that. But we all know people that may want to use it. We need to be talking it up. We need to be our own best advertising for it. The same with the sanctuary in terms of rehearsal space. Gay Men's Chorus was using it for a while, right? They're not using it anymore, but those kinds of groups that need a big space can and should be using it. And yeah, as long as St. Anne's is here, they can't use it during school time, but we need to be all working on these kinds of things. It can't just be the 5 people on the strategic committee, or like all of us need to be talking this up. We need to be intentional about and organize our fundraisers more spread out and to make sure that they're all contributing to the church as well as to the special funds that they're raising for, right? And I think that we do fundraisers well when we do them, but they're usually run off the back of one or two people, and we haven't been as intentional. And I appreciate Pastor Janila kind of making that point in our recent session meeting, that we need to be let's think about how are we hitting the same people's wallets over and over again on these various fundraisers that sometimes are too close together, right? And if we were intentional and spread them out, we could be raising more and better money for the church. We need to be thinking about, and I will say this just, I want to stay with the 4% because that is what we voted on as a session, I think 3 years ago. I wasn't on session at that point, but that was a session vote. But we didn't think about, as necessary, maybe take 5% from the endowment, or maybe take 6%, right? When the endowment, and I see some people shaking their heads already, but that's what I think, right? Because when the endowment has gone from 1.6 million to 2.2 million in less than 2 years, taking 6% for 1 year is not like that scary to me. Now, I'm saying that as me. That's only me speaking, not as a session member. And then the last thing I think we need to think about in terms of marching orders is how are we using our designated funds better for the general fund? We have some money that's set aside for children, youth, and families, right, that was raised over the years in the Santa's breakfast, right? We've used some of it this year on some children's stuff. But how can those kind of designated funds that are outside the general fund be used to offset some monies that we're using now? We're kind of budgeting general funds money for, but we have some money outside that we could be using more creatively to offset that, kind of like we used our non-pledge giving. But first and foremost, and the main problem we've had for the last few years, is we need to give what we said we're going to give. That's, to me, when we look at the bottom line of all of our, not all of our major issues, but our deficits, we have not given what we said. We need to live into our word.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm having,
There's
oh,
hands
yes.
over here.
And then I want to talk about my deja vu moment.
Hi. So thanks to the Finance Committee for all this hard work, and I like the idea of coming up with a presentation that sort of gives a high level. But this is Budget Saturday, and I've been here 12 years at the church, and one of the things that I always appreciated about Budget Saturday was that we actually saw the numbers, sort of like the previous year, this year, the details, and that we were a church that actually shared all that detailed information. And so I kind of missed that out of this budget, because I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what's in the numbers because they weren't shown to us, and we've always had a Budget Saturday that showed us all the numbers, and we could see where things were, where the expenses were, and we just had knowledge. So I think that's important. I think that if I were voting, I'd say next year, let's make sure we keep Budget Saturday a place where the church is high disclosure, shares all the numbers.
She said she emailed it. Did you say you emailed it?
Yeah, so absolutely fair. Anybody who would like to have a copy of our budget, I'm willing to send that out and share those sorts of details. It is, yeah, that's fine. As far as the changes, one thing I hoped by doing it kind of on a high level is to show that it's really been the same budget for 10 years. So if you saw it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago on Budget Saturday, you saw it. The differences between our spending this year and last, we are spending more on salary than we were last year. That area has increased because we have an interim pastor and who we didn't have before. So we have a higher allocation for salary.
Jenny, I think the point is the transparency that we had I think you guys heard my loudmouth. But
The transparency that we had on Budget Saturday was very useful, and I think we need to get back to that. A high level is great as an overview, but it is not enough. Transparency means more to me, for sure, and I have a feeling to others. We need to be able to see those numbers so that we can be very realistic. High level is great, but it's not enough.
I think that a high level is also transparent, but if you want more details, that's a different thing. I think that I don't want to get, it's hard to say that this process is not. I think it's transparent, but it's at a different level, and I appreciate people who want the details. That's one thing. The reason I had my hand up before is I wanted to talk about pledges. And I've said this before, some people are reluctant to pledge because they tell me this, that they're afraid that they can't meet their pledge. And I think that if we listen to what Jenny was saying, as she was talking about people, not specifically, who have different talent, a treasure in terms of presenting to the church, and not everyone is expected to give at the same level, but give what you can and in your heart to give. And I wanted to say that if in fact, and I've said this to a couple of people who have talked to me about their pledging or not pledging, is that if you find that your circumstances change, and they often do mid-year or something, that we should as a church be willing to hear. You should feel free to come back and say, I pledged, I'm going to make a figure, I pledged $100, but I can only give 50, so that we know that somewhere that we have to do that change. But some people are reluctant to say that. The other thing too is that we have income inequality. That's what diversity means in this church. And so we have to be respectful of that. And there's some people who give a lot in terms of special things, but who do not pledge at a certain level. And I think that we need to encourage them to pledge, and we need to understand that as we develop, and it's not just a spirit of giving, but it's a spirit of abundance. It's developing a spirit and a community of generosity. And that there are people who, as Jenny was saying earlier, when you start planning from the beginning, you somehow find that you can make a way out of no way sometimes. But I just want to encourage people to give at the level that they can. One thing that I do, which a couple of people have said to me, I don't think that's a wise thing, but I'll share it with you anyway, is that I under-pledge and over-deliver. Because I feel more comfortable with that. And so at the end of the year, when I look at what I've given, then I've given more than I pledged. Now, I don't know if I should, on the other hand, go back around September and say, well, maybe I should change my pledge. No, I would rather, that's for me, that's the way that I'm able to do it. And I think people, if you find your own way that you're comfortable with, but pledging is something that it seems like a simple thing to many of us, but I know people who are very reluctant to pledge because they don't want to be held to something that would disappoint them, and we have to help them get through that. Thank you. Other comments, questions, frustrations, joys? I think I'll just add a thought.
I just want to say what a joy it was for me to be here today and hear the word God in a finance conversation. And to say that we have been given a mission, and that has something to do with money. It has something to do with pledging. It has something to do with all those different financial things. I'm forever trying to say to people, where is God in this when we're doing something here? And I didn't have to say that today. I was all ready to say something about where is God in this, but it was all taken away from me, so that's all I have to say.
that's a great conversation to end on. Is there anybody else that has a very, yes?
So here's where it's gotten this